So in this session at GroupBy, we're going to talk about the tool that probably all of us use every single day, SQL Server Management Studio. Daniel's going to show all kinds of tips and tricks that you can use to go be a better SQL Server professional. So take it away, Daniel.
Yeah, so for those of you who haven't read or seen anything by me, I'm Daniel, and I write my, let's take it from the beginning. I started working on SQL Server sometime like 1999, 1998. I seem to recall it was SQL Server 7, which to me felt like it was a cool idea to migrate after working with Microsoft Access. You can judge by my surprise when I realized I had to change all the VBA functions and everything. So either way, I've been a consultant for most of my life, which is close to some 20 professional years or so. And I'm completely stuck in working with SQL Server. I used to be a web developer. I don't do that anymore. It's all SQL Server. I just code T-SQL. And as such, I spend a lot of time in Management Studio. And I tend to end up in situations where I sit with customers and I do something, I show them something, a quick keyboard command, or I execute something. And they're like, wait, what did you just do that? and I realize that this is not so obvious to everyone. So for most of you people who are watching this session, it's going to be something like a level 100 or a level 50, and you're going to recognize and know exactly what I'm showing you for like 90% of the cases. But I'm thinking that every single one of you will probably see something somewhere in this presentation that will appeal to you, and where you'll think like, oh, hey, this is interesting. Why haven't I used this? So I think Aaron Bertner said, never code in a demo, and that's pretty much everything I'm going to do. You're going to see very few PowerPoint slides. I'm not even going to put them up on the site unless you really want it, Brent. There's not really much information in the PowerPoint. You can just check the video again when it comes up on YouTube. Yeah, so just because I have to say it, SQL Server Management Studio used to be tied to SQL Server releases, which meant that when SQL Server 2012 was released, you got SQL Server Management Studio 2012, and when 2014 was released, you got Management Studio 2014, etc., etc. And with Azure and other developments, this had to change. So nowadays, Management Studio is a standalone tool. The latest version is 2016, right? Mm-hmm. Which resembles Visual Studio 2015 a lot, in my opinion. And you can see that these are pretty much the same product under the hood. Management Studio is backward compatible with all previous supported SQL Server versions, though I personally find that if you should run across an unsupported previous version, like 2005, it'll probably still work. I have to click back here all the time because it keeps scrolling. Anyway, so let me just gonna jump right in, and this will appear like pretty much a large list of stuff that I've compiled that I thought of when I wrote the abstract first and then the presentation, which is a good way to go.
Of course.
Yeah. They'll never bite. They'll never bite. Don't worry.
Everyone wants to see. Yes, everyone wants. Oh gosh, here goes everything.
So the splitter, everyone has used the splitter, and what you might not know is that if you want to make the splitter go away, the easy solution is just to drag it up to the top again. But it's too simple, and it gives you no control. So what I usually do, say you're further down in the code, you're in the thousands of line numbers somewhere. The pane that you want to keep, the upper or lower, you can choose that by putting the cursor on that pane. And when you have the cursor on the correct pane, you double-click the splitter, and it resumes on that side. So let's try that. And if we scroll all the way up to the top, I place my cursor here now and double click, and boom, we're in the 150s.
Nice.
So that's pretty nice. I just copied and pasted one of my big housekeeping scripts. Let's see if this runs at all. Yeah. Let's say we introduce some type of little error here somewhere. I'll just remove this comma here just to break the script. Here's another double click. See? Incorrect syntax near reads. This is in a script of, what, 1,500 lines or something, and you might not even be in where that error happened. You can double click this red text, and that'll take you to where the error actually happened. That's also something I use all the time. It doesn't work with all the rethrow logic. If you have try catch, and in the catch block you throw something, and if that's nested or in a stored procedure, it won't work. But whenever the error is clearly identifiable, just double-clicking the error message will take you to that line, the offending line.
A couple of people have already asked, wait a minute, what's the splitter? How did you get there again?
Oh, okay, that level. I'm sorry, I was just assuming everyone is a DBA with no user experience. Right, so up here in the right end, up in the upper right corner, this is the splitter. It's the same that you have in Word, actually, or in Excel.
Very nice.
That
there you go.
The window. It's still the same script. Everything here is the same script, and I can execute the script, and it's as if you have two windows of exactly the same code. Except
where I adore it for is that like what you've got is a declare of a table variable, and then later in the code, or a temp table, and then later in the code you're working on that table, and you're like, what are those fields again? What are the definitions?
Yeah, exactly. So you might use exec sessions here somewhere, and you have to look up what are the column definitions, and for that it's really, really practical. So
JD
I tend to use this.
Oh, JD says he's embarrassed. He's been working as a DBA for more than 10 years, and he's never known about the splitter. So there you go. Well, JD, you can leave the session. You got enough.
Okay. So you're not developers, I suppose. I couldn't set up a failover cluster if my life depended on it. And I hope none of my customers are watching, because eventually I'm going to set up a failover cluster.
Yes.
If not else, because I brought Brent's excellent online course on setting up high availability and disaster recovery stuff, which is really, really great. Thanks.
Oh, good. Glad you like it.
So, once again, I'm going to double-click the splitter to make it go away. And keyboard shortcuts. This is what sells it for me. I'm not going to show you the slides because slides are boring. Whenever you select something, a table name, for instance, or a view or a stored procedure, you can press Alt F1. And Alt F1 will show you the information on that object. And this is pretty handy stuff. What happens under the shell is it runs a special command in the master database called sp_help. So if I copy this, and I write sp_help apostrophe sysdm exec sessions, and I run that, this is the output. And this is really practical, especially if you have to look up the column definitions or something on an object you're working with. You get the object, so you can see that it's a view because it's a DMB. These are the columns and their data types, and you would see if there's an index or all sorts of stuff. So this is something that I use all the time. I've used SP-help with the Alt F1 shortcut for as long as I can remember. It even worked in Query Analyzer. Anyone here work with Query Analyzer?
Yes, sadly, yes.
Yes. So the cool thing is you can set your own query shortcuts. If you go to Tools, Options, and you look for Environment, Keyboard, Query Shortcuts, you can actually enter pretty much anything you want here. The Alt F1 here, it's hard-coded. You can't change it because I suppose Microsoft says this is the way it's supposed to be. But I tend to use Control F1 And some of the neat things you can do, it doesn't have to be a stored procedure, because under the hood, I'm not going to show you the exact stuff with Profiler because I might lose all of those last viewers that are still on. It checks if this shortcut is a stored procedure or if it is a SQL statement.
Ooh.
And in this case, it's a SQL statement. It says select top 1,000 from. I don't know if you can see that.
Mm-hmm.
Whoops. So, yeah. And I'm going to show you how that looks. If I select any random arbitrary code here, say the name of this DMV, and I press Control F1, to which I assign that shortcut, it does a select top 1,000 star from this table.
That's perfect, because I could use it to set up drop table, and I could just drop tables very quickly.
Yeah. And your job.
Yes.
And the smooth thing is it's all just passed through at T-SQL, so I can add a condition where session ID greater than or equal to 50. And if I mark all of this and Control F1, it'll give me just the sessions of 50 or higher.
Spiffy.
So this stuff I use continuously whenever I'm at a new machine with a new management studio, because clients won't let me bring my own hardware into their environments. I press Control F1 and I wonder, why isn't it working? So to recap, you can use Tools, Options, Environment, Keyboard, Query Shortcuts. And what I've done is I'm going to shamelessly plug one of my posts. I've developed a stored procedure which looks like SP help, but in my humble opinion, does a lot more. So it goes totally overboard in some respects. I'm going to use a different table because it doesn't work well with DMVs. But it shows you the columns and plain text readable column definitions. So you can pretty much just copy this and paste it into a create table statement. And it gives you unique constraints and indexes and foreign key constraints and everything ready scriptable, so you can just copy it into a new window. And I even had a little attempt at some ASCII art. You can see the dependencies on different tables. So if you have a hammer, everything looks like a nail. This is, I'm a hammer type of guy, right?
That's
I
cute.
don't do anything else. I used to be able to code a pretty web page. Nowadays it's all model view controllers, and I don't know the half of it. I couldn't code a web page.
Oh, that's excellent.
Unless it's WordPress. Yeah. So you can assign pretty much any shortcut you like to one of the things I do is this is a database name. I assigned use to one of my keyboard shortcuts. Now note up here how when I press Control-0, I changed the database. Might not apply to you, might not be useful, but you can pretty much put any code you like in one of those shortcuts. And if there is an MVP or anyone out there who knows what execute stored procedure shortcuts without additional execution options means, I have no idea. I've Googled, I've found books online information where the URL crashes. I have no idea what that means. Hit me up on Twitter.
I was going to say nothing's popped into Twitter or into Slack yet, so we'll see if anybody comes up with it by the end of the session.
Microsoft, call me.
Yeah.
Yes. Right. So, yeah. Next up, whoa. Go is a statement separator, which is also pretty useful. So you can use Go in Management Studio, and most of you have probably seen this. You can select one as X, Go. All these scripts, when you script a table or script indexes or stuff, it comes out like this with Go statements. And Go isn't strictly speaking T-SQL. And that's why I consider it part of Management Studio. I don't technically know if it's part of the protocol or... what it does is it separates batches of statements. So I was wrong in saying statement separator, I mean batch separator. Say if you, let's run this and it returns a 1. So everything's fine here. If I do declare x int equals 1 and go and select x, that won't work because you've declared the x here in this batch, and this is a new batch where x isn't declared any longer. And so this is good to know, which also means that if you select x divided by x minus 1 or whatever, it's a bit contrived, I know, and you add another statement here, if you run this, you will get a divide by 0 error here. We can verify that by double-clicking. It gives us this error, but then it will run the next batch. So go means we're done, everything is forgiven, and execute the next batch. The practical purpose of an unknown practical purpose of Go is that you can have it repeat code over and over and over. So typically, if you're setting up demo environments or if you're populating big tables with repetitive data, you can just add a number after Go and have it execute several times over. So if I write Go 10, that means execute this batch 10 times. And so you can see I got 10 result sets back. So that's something I use pretty often just to populate temp tables for demo purposes or whatever.
Another person says I saw that in another session today and I'd never seen that before either. So yeah.
Yeah, and I saw in Aaron's session he wrote drop if exists or exists, yeah, exists. Mm-hmm. Drop table DBO A, DBO B, DBO C. I had no idea you could do this.
That's brand new in 2016. I think Aaron will correct me in Slack if I'm wrong. And I think it's drop if exists.
Drop if exists. That might be. Yeah. The thing is, I just tried drop table, and if I don't have tables named A, B, and C, but you can parse it, and it'll look okay. So this is a 2014 box, the instance I'm connected to right here. But drop table A, B, C works, which is, oh, I learned something. So that's nice.
Yeah, Hugo Cornelis says the drop if exists is new in 2016, but using a comma-separated list of table names is not new. Who on earth is dropping so many tables that they need to put in a comma-delimited list? Who are these people?
Yeah. It's that's a pathological drop behavior.
Aaron points out drop blank if exists, so it needs to be like drop table if exists. That's the technical answer on that one. Okay, good.
Yeah, that's going to be a spine reaction sometime in the future. I'm going to do that everywhere. Drop if exists. Yes. Typically, when you're a developer, if you don't, I've heard that there are people who don't version their code in TFS and things like that. You have these long scripts that you save somewhere, and all those scripts start with drop if exists or create or alter or So you want to be able to run the script if the objects exist or not. So that's Here's another thing that I pretty much never use, but I can see how it's practical for some purposes. I'm going to just copy this row and I'm going to paste it in there. And I'm going to copy this row and paste it in there. And finally, I'm going to copy this row. It doesn't have to work. I'm just copying rows at random. What you can do is, instead of Control-V, which is paste, you can press Control-Shift-V, which cycles your clipboard ring. And you're saying clipboard ring? Yeah, there's that Management Studio, and I suppose Visual Studio keeps track of the last. The mileage might vary. I've had 10 or 15 last clippings that you've used. So if you press Control-Shift-V repetitively, it'll cycle through all these things that I've copied in the past. And I hope none of these are compromising.
Right? Yeah. Resume or whatever. Man, every time I sit through an SSMS presentation, I see this and I forget every freaking time, every single time.
And this is a really nice feature. It's really practical.
Mm-hmm.
And while we're on the shift thing, I'm going to do my Control F1 trick again, just to select all the rows from the DMV. If I select a bunch of fields and I right-click, you can see that copy is Control-C, but copy with headers is Control-Shift-C. And being in BI, which is, what pays my bills, this is really, really handy when you copy with headers and you paste something into, say, Excel, especially if you have 35 column names or something. You get the column header as well as the values. And that you don't have to select the top row, you can just select any row or any column anywhere. So Control-Shift-C will actually include the header names. This stuff I use all the time. Definitely recommend it if you haven't tried it. There is a trick, another one. Say you just want to get a list of all the column names from this DMV. You can add where 1 equals 0. Do the Control F1 or select star. You get an empty result set. I place the focus, so I click in the empty result set. I click Control A to select everything, to select all, and Control Shift C to copy with headers. I'm copying an empty result set with headers, and I can just paste it here, and I get all these column names.
Oh, that's
pretty
funny.
neat.
Huh.
There's another trick for this, which might even be better, is that you can browse in Object Explorer and you can drag these columns here. And that'll give you a comma-separated list of all the columns, which it doesn't get much prettier than this.
Yeah, makes your life much easier. Much easier.
Yeah. And again, the coolness factor. Being a cyclist, it's all about coolness, looking cool and looking like it's not an effort at all. Just this is what I do every day, right? I'm not trying to show off.
Drag and drop, drag and drop. Yeah.
Right. I'm going to trust you to just fire up any questions that pop up. So.
Oh yeah, no, people. The one thing they've said is, so Go, the batch separator, you can change that under Tools and Options. So, the only reason we kind of joke around, under Tools, Options, Query Execution. This is so Query Execution. Keep going down, and it's like 4 lines down. Query Execution, SQL Server General. Down there is batch separator. So there's 2 things that are funny about this. One is you can change it to something like select, and it will break people's queries. So they'll get incorrect syntax near select. My personal experience, and Andy also points out that you shouldn't ever make it where, because it's funny when their selects take a really long time, but when they run a delete, the delete dumps the whole table. The other thing that I've seen, and I don't know, I haven't reproduced this on 2016 yet, but I've even typed in select there to be funny and clicked cancel, and it took effect even though I clicked cancel. So just be really careful in the batch separator window.
Ouch. That's horrible.
Whee!
Yeah. Okay, so going back to my really awkwardly huge script, if I select something and I click Control F, or if I just choose Find, I don't know, Edit, Find, I suppose. Quick Find. I could just press Control F. You'll notice that if I leave focus, if I place the cursor back in the editor again, I can just keep scrolling, and at some point I'm going to find, did I choose the one that I'm not using? Yeah, you see where this is going. So it highlights all the search hits. And if you're like me, you don't want to find the next by just clicking
the arrow there.
Find next.
Yeah.
You can just see, particularly if you search for something that's very common. So say you want to search for not null and Control F. It just highlights every column that is not null, which is, I find that really, really practical. And that also goes for, the thing with the pre-population thing is that you can also have it look for strange characters. I mean, try to enter a tab here. It doesn't work. It just, but you can select the tab and Control F, and it'll find all the tabs for you. And you could even replace the tabs with 3 dots or
spaces, yeah. If you're
or spaces, or yeah. Yeah, if you don't want to break your code, yeah, you could do that, I suppose.
I like that. I like that. You can do that with enters too. You can find and replace enters if you highlight the enters. If you want to put all
I
your
tried it when I wrote like this.
Exactly. Yeah. Oh,
no,
you
it
might have
it inherits the tab. I seem to recall that this has worked at some point, but I couldn't. Maybe I can copy this and paste it in there. No.
Huh. Oh, now I got to fire up my SSMS to see what's going on. All right, carry on.
Probably have to use some type of yeah.
I have to know now. I have to know. All right, you keep going.
Yeah. So you can replace tabs with if you, like we had here, with the column names. I can search and replace this tab with comma space. And I'm lazy, so I could click replace all, but I just click Alt A. But that's, personal preference. What was I going to talk about more? Yes. Oh, another really important thing. You can replace within a selection. Note that if I find, or Control H for replace, for not null, for instance, it'll search the current document. So the pre-selected context is current document. You could change this to look for all open documents or the entire solution if you're using solutions. What I like to do is select a block of code and press Control H, and it'll only look for this value within this selection. So I can change this to null, and it'll only change my selection. It won't touch the nulls up here. So that's kind of powerful.
Jim points out that he likes using regular expressions. If you use \n in regular expressions, you can use things like enters in the window. Like, woo, that's powerful.
Yeah, I was going to see that coming. Regex is scary. I don't know regex.
Sean and Jen McCown seem to be the people to talk to in the SQL Server community about that. They've had a couple of good sessions on it. So.
Mm-hmm. And where was I going with this? Oh, yeah. We've looked at find and replace. The alt selection thing, that's what usually kicks off this reaction, like, hey, what? It's when you make a selection like this, it moves out on the end of the line and it continues on the next line and so on. But if you hold down the alt key while you're making selections, you can make this type of selection instead, which is really, really nice. So let's find one where the indent is correct. Or, yeah, let's just do this. So if I select this block of text, I can copy it, and here's the kicker. I can make a selection like this, and I can paste it here. And so this is typically useful in repetitive code type of where was I going with
Building
this?
a table.
Yes.
Building a table is really
Yeah.
common.
Yeah, exactly. So if I move back to the correct database and I look for this table, I can, let's say I want to compare columns from two different temp tables. So I have a select from A as A, inner join B as B on AX equals BX. So I want to look for all the columns in the A table and their respective counterparts in the B table, and I want to see if there's a difference in any of them.
Mm-hmm.
So I just list all my columns from the A table, and I can use the Alt key and select this. You can see how this would be useful if you have 100 columns. I just type A, so I can go on typing here with this selection, which is really weird.
That is so cool, an army of marching typing.
Yeah, and then I select with the Alt trick here and copy. Make another selection like this. It's just a vertical bar. I'm not actually selecting any cells. And I can type B dot and paste. I do the same thing here. And then I can write something like is null A dot and paste or something. You get the idea.
Yeah.
And the trick is you can copy this, you can paste this, but you can also type. So to me, this is, yeah, I use this all the time without even thinking about it. And this is typically one of those things that I want to show in this session.
RZ is saying, this one is absolutely amazing to me. T. Friedman says he uses it all the time for pasting values from an in clause from Excel. You copy paste the column in, and then you can just put in a list of commas.
Yeah, so I'm going to show that now.
Okay. Oh, okay.
If you copy all these values, I copy them here, and you can paste them, and whoops. You just add a single quote there, and you select this, add a single quote or an apostrophe and a comma, and you just remove the last. Oh yeah, we're going to need parentheses. There. Select star from values. Some indenting. And as X, Y.
I didn't know you could do that. Select star from values. I'll be doggone. I didn't know that.
Yeah. And this works just like any table. But the thing is, you don't have any column names, so you have to explicitly assign them. So the columns go here, just like with a common table expression.
Praveen says, this is really amazing.
Yep. Yeah. Right. How much time do we have? I've been 35 minutes, which is...
Well, you're the last one, so you're kind of okay.
Yeah, I'm the last one, but this is going to be a fairly short session because I can sense how people are just leaving for their Friday nights. Okay. And this is a really simple one that it's also under the category I don't even think about it. You could use your scroll wheel and to move the cursor, but if you use a mouse, you might not want to reach for the mouse. You might just want to keep your hands on the keyboard. And so you can hold down Control and press cursor up and cursor down. If you don't press Control, the cursor obviously will move. If you hold down Control, you can just take a peek at what's up there and still stay in one place with the cursor, which is nice. But notice that when the cursor reaches the bottom of the screen, it starts following you up. So it's not perfect, but yeah. For those occasions where you're working on this query and you forgot the definition of the table cran locks, you can just scroll up with Control and the up and down arrows. So this is practical. Also, I'm just moving right ahead here. There's really, I can feel sometimes that there's not really this red thread that connects everything. I'm just going through the list of my cool stuff that I want to show people on the internet.
Mm-hmm.
So typically you want to, you can right-click a table and you script table, create a new query editor window. This is really practical. But what if someone wants you to script 12 tables? You can't shift-click tables here. It doesn't work that way. So what you can do is you can click the parent container in the Object Explorer and click F7. We saw that in the PowerShell demo as well. And here, you can shift-click and you can control-click and you can select multiple objects and you can right-click and use the context menus. And most of these context menus will actually work on these objects. So you can script, I can create, script create table for like 7 or 8 tables, and they all end up after each other's. So you have one here, you have the next here, and so on and so on. You get them all in one nice script, which is, I think that's fabulous.
Michael Armentrout says this is a game changer for him, so yes.
Glad to hear it. Mm-hmm. And for me, I discovered this when I wanted to script jobs on one server and copy them to another. Except I didn't have just 10 jobs, I had something like 20, 30 jobs. Right, you click on jobs, you click F7, and you select multiple jobs, script as drop, by all means. And it'll just script drop job for all those that you selected, which to me is, that's a time saver. Or you could just press delete, I suppose. I don't dare do that because I actually want to keep these jobs, but I think you can actually press delete. And you can also filter. You can add additional filters here because you're in the Object Explorer details view. Right, a few more things to go. I was at a client recently. They had this complex Active Directory type of thing set up where you would use a command, a DOS command called run as. Mm-hmm. Now I'm in deep waters here. I'm only a few of our listeners will probably know what I'm talking about. So with run as, you can run a DOS command or a Windows exe with a number of parameters, including you can set a different user context. So you can tell this, it's pretty much equivalent to right-clicking an icon and run as user. And you can tell it to use environment or not, or you can tell it to, yeah. I don't know half of these, what these variables mean, but we used it and it gave us some problems because in SQL Server Management Studio you will get the correct credentials when you log on to SQL Server. And then you would open up another application. For instance, I would check in code with TFS. So I would open up Visual Studio to check in my code. Except TFS and Visual Studio would run in the wrong user context. Mm-hmm. So what I started doing was I started adding all those tools, all those utilities that I use under external tools. And so what happens is when you go to tools, external tools, and you launch an application.
Oh, I think we lost your audio there. We'll see if it comes back. What I think he's saying, and it probably is popping on his other monitor. Did we lose your, are you back yet? Nope, he's checking. So when you, I didn't even know about tools, external tools.
Different sector.
There you go. We lost about the last 90 seconds of audio there. The screen worked perfectly, but just not the audio.
Oh yeah, I had the same with Aaron's session.
Yeah.
So if I add an exe file to external tools, it will inherit the user context that Management Studio runs under. So if you've gone to all this trouble running Management Studio under a different security context, like under a different user or with runas.exe, you won't have to re-enter those credentials. You can start a new application within this same user context or security context. So I'm going to start Management Studio in a separate Management Studio as the user test. Here we go. CPU is maxing. Scary stuff.
Yeah, load testing.
Yeah. I'm going to open up a new session. Notice that I don't have my sleek settings here. And just select suser, sname. Not even Control E works. What is this witchcraft? and it says test here. So I'm logged in with my test user. And what can we do here? Oh yeah, here's one I made earlier. I actually added cmd.exe as my external tools. For those of you who didn't see it, it's under Tools, External Tools.
That's really cool.
And you can just add as many applications as you like. You could have Visual Studio, you could have Plan Explorer, you could have any number of utilities. Profiler, there's already a shortcut under Tools, but you get the gist. So for this demo, I've added cmd.exe, which is the standard command prompt. I'm going to try to launch that. I do there, and I'm going to write who am I, and I am test.
Wow.
And so this is really handy if you have this really cumbersome process to log in on the network or authenticate for some reason, like in a mixed LDAP/AD/cloud/on-prem environment like my last client had. Yeah. And this is how I discovered that. I would just launch Visual Studio from the Tools menu. I would just launch any TFS compare tool or anything. Just I had them all as a list of external tools.
That's pretty slick.
Alrighty, and we've done this. And bring your own settings. I've spent so much time customizing all my settings. You can probably tell I don't usually use these large fonts, but everything else is like customized to death, really. And what you can do then is import and export settings. These are the Visual Studio settings. Here's a trick, or no, it's not a trick, it's a warning. Read carefully what it says because it's not entirely intuitive. You can export selected environment settings. This is fine, this is a no-brainer. And the options here are, you can, by default it doesn't select the import-export settings because it's like an inception type of thing. It'll loop back on itself. I'm not going to go into detail on that. You just click next, next, next. You can choose which settings to export. I'm going to put this on my desktop and demo settings. And click finish. And that's it. We have a file on our desktop which is, where is it? It's 163 Ks because it's an XML file. And I have this configuration file that I put in my Dropbox, and whenever I started a new client, whenever I remote desktop to a new server, I know you're not supposed to run SSMS on a server, so everyone, don't run SSMS on servers, but sometimes you have to. I can just take this with me and load the settings in, and I'll be home. I'll have my settings, my keyboard commands, my everything will just work. This is really, really practical. It gets trickier when you want to import values. So import selected environment settings. Note that it says, yes, save my current settings. So if you don't read carefully, and I've done this, you might just browse and you take demo settings. This is the one I want to import, right? And it's, what do you mean replace? And that's a good thing it says so, but I think I may have overwritten settings with the standard settings. So just read carefully. If you don't want to export your old settings, you just click no, import new settings just. And here you get the option to browse for your settings that you want to use. So this a gotcha that I fell into a couple of times until I got used to it. Right, I'm speeding along. I have one more thing to show you. It's registered servers, and I thought everyone was doing this, and it turns out I've hardly met anyone who uses it. Notice up here how I'm not going to show you my clients, but these are my registered servers. So these are shortcuts pretty much. I can just double-click this one, and I was already connected. So double-click this, and I'm connected, or I could right-click and new query. And I don't have to remember the SQL authentication. I don't need to remember all those quirky connection properties. I can even register it with a color. So for production machines, it's red. Test machines, I make it yellow. And for development machines or toy machines, I make it green. And that way, I get this just glance in SQL Server Management Studio if I'm at risk of making anything dangerous. Word of warning, these colors can get messed up sometimes. I think it might be a bug somewhere, but if you try to right-click and change connection, and you take another server and connect, I'm not connected to the VPN now, but if I connect to another server, it sometimes inherits this color, and that way you can sometimes overwrite these saved colors if you just use connect to. So don't trust the colors, but you can set them just by choosing connection properties and custom color.
Nice.
So where was I going with this? Oh yeah, to register, I'm going to start. I'm going to create a new SQL Server group here. I'll call it demo. Then right-click demo and tasks. No, I'm not. It's new server registration. And here I can register whatever server I want. I can even give a plain text name, MySQL 2014 box. And I can add a lot of connection properties if I want a default database, which is useful for availability groups, for instance. I can choose a network protocol, encrypt connection, all those things, and save. And yeah, I was already connected. Note that when I connect to this, it actually says in plain text what I named the server, as opposed to the server's actual instance name, which I think is a nice feature. If you don't like it, make a habit of naming the registered server the same as the actual instance name. Here's another cool feature. I'm going to register another server here. This is my local 2016 instance. I'm going to call this my SQL 2016 box. And save it. What do you suppose happens if I create a new query on this container?
Magic.
That's messed up. That's messed up. I just discovered this like a year ago, and it's probably been there for decades. I'm going to select at server name, which is a built-in variable that gives you the name of the SQL Server instance. And I click execute, and it returns 2 rows, and it has added the server name. Enhance that. So you have a server name column which tells you where the result set came from, and it has the result set. So in this case, it executes this on each of those servers in this group, which to me is, it's probably more of a DBA thing, because you want to do maintenance and diagnostics or checks or start some SQL Server agent job or something on 8 different servers at once. But I can see how a developer could use this in some sense also, I suppose.
Our Climb says this is how he likes to deploy scripts to multiple servers. He'll just go run, multi-server query and create the stored procedure like SP is active, SP blitz, whatever.
Exactly. And hello world. Note that it says it returns the text output one server at a time. So you can see that my SQL 24 box, 14 box says hello world, and my 2016 box says hello world. When I was toying around, I noted something. Note how the nanoseconds are the same on both instances. What are the odds that this query actually runs the very same nanosecond on two instances on a tiny laptop?
Oh, we got
Someone
several
might
people.
know.
Several people who've got great uses for this. Tim says he likes to use this for disabling logins when people leave. Makes sense. I could see it for changing SQL authentication passwords across lots of boxes. Hugo says he uses this to find table and column names and stored procedures across multiple servers. I'm guessing he's hitting like information schema routines or sys. I forget what that is.
Good one.
Yeah. All right. No, go ahead. Keep going now.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. And so I'm gonna chime in with Pinal. Like, thank you so much for putting up this opportunity for even us who are not used to speaking at anything bigger than a small SQL Saturday somewhere in the outskirts of something. It's a rush, and it's so much fun to speak here. Not only because, like someone said, this is totally going in my LinkedIn profile. Yeah, I have so many superlatives. Just thank you so much for putting this all together, and the SQL Server community is just the greatest.
It really is. I tell people all the time that everyone wants to get people up on stage. You want to get other people presenting. It's all about giving back and sharing to other people around you. It's probably the best way we could end up at the end of GroupBy is talking about that we're really all about letting people get up here and share what they know. It's all volunteers. Everybody that you've seen, today and yesterday and last week. It's all about just giving back to the community in any way that we can. And it's so much easier here when we can do it from home. We can do it from anywhere in the world. People can just sign in. And then next you get to go watch the YouTube.
Development. I'm sure I spent, before I got my own business, I was like employed for 15 years or something with a number of different employers who wouldn't or couldn't or just didn't see the value in sending me on fancy conferences. And attending an online conferences like this or a SQL Saturday is a great opportunity to just learn cool stuff. And just asking questions on Twitter with SQL help hashtag, or there are so many examples of how this community is unlike any other software community that I've seen anyway. And it's just a great place to be.
Yeah, everybody, it's not like everyone wants to hide their knowledge so you can't get it. It's not like a job security thing. I can't share my secrets. It's all very much about just sharing what you know. And the same thing with the career thing. You should be amazed if people can Google you and find you, it opens up so many doors. When a hiring manager has a stack of resumes and they can Google you and they go, oh, well, this person really seems to know what they're doing. Oh my gosh, it really opens a lot of doors.
And it did cross my mind when I started blogging back in 2013. It was like, what if am I putting all my cool tricks and secrets out there? I mean, no one will hire me because A, they'll know exactly what I know, and B, they won't need me because it's on the internet, right?
And at the same time, everything we do is on the internet in one way or another, but it's how do you find someone who can demonstrate they learned it, and you can just grab them and put them in front of a computer and let them do their thing.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much for sharing your time with us today. Really appreciate it. And folks, you can go ahead and go over to SQL Sunday. There were several people who asked, how do they get Control F3, the Daniel stored procedure that lists how to like all kinds of metadata, and it's on SQLSunday.com.
Yeah, it's on SQLSunday.com. Look at the 3 or so most recent blog posts, or just go to downloads if you're watching this in a year or two. On the downloads page, there is SP Control 3. Try it out.
Perfect.
Don't take code from people on the internet, but it's safe for development environments. There's no reason why you would need this in a production environment, but it's safe for development. That's
not how it works. On the internet, everybody immediately put it into production. That's how this works.
Exactly. And And if you want to pay me cash money to work, my email address is down on the right. So yeah, shameless plug.
Shameless plug. Subscribe to his blog as well over at SQL Sunday. Keep tabs on what he's doing. Well, thanks for hanging out with us on Friday night. Thanks, everybody, for spending your Friday day with us, and we will see you at the next time. Adios, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.